Emily Carter was seconds away from disappearing. The man across from her had just slipped a drug into her drink. Outside the restaurant, a black SUV was already waiting. And inside that vehicle were two men ready to take her. For floors above the restaurant, someone saw everything. Daniel Wright. From the glass wall of his private floor, he watched the dining hall below through a series of security screens. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then he saw the man's hand move. A quick motion. Something dropped into Emily's glass. Daniel's eyes hardened immediately. He had seen this before. Drug first. Kidnap second. Silence afterward. Downstairs, Emily lifted the glass. The liquid moved slowly against the crystal surface. For some reason, her instincts told her to stop. She lowered the glass again. Across the table, the man's expression changed. Just slightly. His calm smile tightened. Then his phone lit up. A message flashed across the screen. "Move now." The man stood suddenly and grabbed Emily's wrist. Too fast. Too forceful. Emily felt the shift instantly. This wasn't a date anymore. He pulled her toward the exit. Outside the restaurant doors, the black SUV engine started. Two men stepped away from the vehicle. Waiting. Emily's pulse exploded with fear. She tried pulling her arm free. The man tightened his grip. Cold air hit her face as the door opened. The SUV lights flashed. Then, a voice cut through the moment. "Let her go." Everyone turned. Daniel Wright stepped forward from the sidewalk shadows. Calm. Focused. Dangerous. The man holding Emily hesitated. That hesitation lasted less than a second. Daniel moved first. A brutal punch landed across the man's jaw. The impact dropped him instantly. The two men near the SUV rushed forward. But they stopped abruptly. Two security guards appeared behind Daniel. Silent. Massive. The kidnappers realized the situation had flipped. The SUV doors slammed. The vehicle roared away into the night. The street fell quiet again. Emily stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. Daniel glanced down the empty street. The attackers were gone. For now. He turned toward Emily. "Come with me," he said. Emily hesitated only briefly before following him inside. Moments later, a private elevator carried them upward. Higher. Far above the restaurant. When the doors opened, Emily stepped into an enormous private floor overlooking the city. Security monitors covered one wall. Daniel walked toward one of the screens. Then he turned back to her. "You're in danger." Emily's heart was still racing. "Why?" Daniel tapped one of the monitors. The screen displayed a building. A building Emily recognized instantly. Her last project site. Daniel's voice turned cold. "That building belongs to Victor Bellows." Emily didn't recognize the name. But Daniel's next words changed everything. "And you just documented one of his criminal operations." Silence filled the room. Emily stared at the screen. Realization slowly settled over her. The kidnapping. The poisoned drink. The men waiting outside. It all made sense now. She wasn't a random victim. She was a problem someone wanted removed. Emily slowly turned back toward Daniel. "So what happens now?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "Now we stop him." And in that moment, Emily Carter's normal life ended. Because the most dangerous man in the city had just learned her name. Emily Carter stood in the middle of Daniel Wright's private floor, staring at the security screen. The image on the monitor showed a building she knew very well. A gray industrial structure on 9th Street. For weeks, she had been working there, documenting the interior for a renovation proposal. She had photographed every hallway, every staircase, every hidden corner of the structure. To Emily, it had been just another project. But now Daniel was telling her something completely different. That building belongs to Victor Bellows. Emily looked back at the screen. Nothing about the building had seemed unusual. Just empty offices, large storage rooms, and long concrete corridors. But Daniel didn't look uncertain. He looked completely sure. And that made Emily uneasy. Daniel pulled up another video feed. This one showed the building at night. Several black vehicles arrived at the back entrance. Men stepped out. They moved quickly, carrying large crates inside. Emily felt a chill run through her. "That doesn't look like construction equipment," she said quietly. Daniel shook his head. "It isn't." The footage switched again. Another night. More vehicles. More crates. Armed guards standing near the entrance. Now Emily understood why Daniel had been watching her. She stepped closer to the monitor. "How long has this been happening?" "Months," Daniel replied. The screen zoomed in on the building's rear entrance. Two men opened one of the crates. Inside were stacks of sealed packages. Not tools. Not materials. Something else entirely. Emily crossed her arms, trying to process everything. "You're saying I walked into the middle of a criminal operation without knowing it?" Daniel nodded. "Yes." Emily ran a hand through her hair. "And now they want me gone." Daniel didn't need to answer. The attempted kidnapping had already said enough. Emily turned away from the screens and walked toward the window overlooking the city. Thousands of lights stretched across the skyline. Everything looked normal outside. Cars moved through the streets. People walked along sidewalks. But suddenly Emily realized something. Somewhere in that city, the man responsible for the attack was still out there. Victor Bellows. And he now knew her name. Behind her, Daniel continued working at the monitors. He pulled up a series of images Emily immediately recognized. They were hers. Photos she had taken during her documentation work. Floor plans. Interior layouts. Detailed measurements. Every hallway. Every room. Every entrance. Emily walked back toward the screens. "You have all my files." Daniel nodded. "I copied them after I realized what building you were working in." Emily frowned slightly. "So you've been watching me that long?" Daniel didn't deny it. "When I saw the location of your project, I knew it was only a matter of time before Bellows noticed you." Emily studied the building map on the screen. Her drawings showed every level of the structure, even the underground areas. Suddenly she understood something. Her work wasn't just documentation anymore. It was evidence. Daniel zoomed into the lower level. "Bellows uses the basement for storage," he explained. Emily looked closer. There were several rooms she had photographed without thinking much about them. Large reinforced doors. Security cameras in the corners. Emily remembered wondering why the security system had been so advanced for an abandoned building. Now she knew why. Daniel switched the screen again. This time showing a financial report. Bank accounts. Transfers. Large amounts of money moving through different companies. All connected back to Victor Bellows. Emily exhaled slowly. "You've been building a case against him." Daniel nodded. "For a long time." Emily looked back at her floor plans. "Then why hasn't anyone stopped him yet?" Daniel leaned against the desk. "Because Bellows is careful." The screen changed again. This time showing photos of powerful businessmen shaking Bellows' hand. Politicians. Executives. Influential people. Bellows wasn't just a criminal. He was protected. Emily felt a growing sense of anger. "So he gets away with it." "For now," Daniel said. Emily looked back at the building layout. Her mind began working automatically. As an interior designer, she had spent years analyzing structures, layouts, and movement inside buildings. Now she was looking at the building in a completely different way. Not as a design project, but as a system. She pointed to the basement level. "There are 3 access points here." Daniel walked closer. Emily traced the layout with her finger. "This hallway leads to the loading entrance where those trucks arrive." Daniel nodded. "Yes." Emily continued studying the map. "And this corridor connects directly to the office section upstairs." Daniel watched her carefully. She was thinking. Planning. Emily turned toward him. "You said Bellows moves packages through this building." "Yes." Emily tapped the screen. "Then this place is the center of his operation." Daniel didn't respond. But his silence confirmed it. Emily looked back at the map. If authorities had this information. Daniel finished her thought. They could shut him down. Emily crossed her arms. "So why haven't you given it to them already?" Daniel's voice remained calm. Because without proof of what's inside those shipments, Bellows can deny everything. Emily stared at the crates in the video footage. Then she looked at her documentation again. Something clicked in her mind. When I photographed the basement, she said slowly, I also recorded video for my design reference. Daniel turned toward her. You recorded video? Emily nodded. Yes. Daniel's attention sharpened instantly. Where is it? Emily pulled her phone from her pocket. I backed everything up to my project cloud storage. Daniel stepped closer. Show me. Emily opened the storage app and scrolled through her files. Hundreds of photos appeared on the screen. Then she found the video clips. Short recordings of the basement area. She opened one. The video played. The camera moved slowly through the underground corridor. Then it turned toward one of the storage rooms. Several large crates were already stacked there. Emily hadn't noticed it before. But now, watching closely, she saw the labels on the boxes. Daniel leaned closer to the phone. His eyes narrowed. That's it. The labels clearly showed restricted chemical warnings. Illegal materials. Emily lowered the phone slowly. This proves it. Daniel nodded. Yes. Emily looked back at the skyline through the window. Victor Bellows had tried to make her disappear. But now she had something he couldn't erase. Evidence. She turned back toward Daniel. So what do we do with it? Daniel paused for a moment. Then he walked back to the monitors and pulled up another screen. This one displayed the seal of a federal investigation unit. We give it to them. Emily felt a surge of determination. If they freeze his assets, his entire network collapses. Daniel nodded. That's the idea. Emily looked back at the building one last time. The place that had almost cost her life. Then let's do it. Daniel shut off the monitor. For the first time that night, a small smile appeared on his face. Victor Bellows had made one mistake. He had tried to silence the wrong person. And now the evidence that could destroy him was already in motion. But neither Daniel nor Emily knew one thing yet. Victor Bellows had already realized his plan had failed. And somewhere in the city, he was preparing his next move. Victor Bellows did not lose control easily. For years, he had built his operation carefully, layer by layer, hiding his criminal network behind legitimate businesses and powerful connections. Every shipment, every payment, every meeting was carefully managed. Nothing reached him directly. Nothing could be traced back. That was why he had survived for so long. But tonight, something had gone wrong. Inside a quiet penthouse office across the city, Bellows stared at the message on his phone. Target escaped. His expression darkened. That wasn't supposed to happen. The woman was supposed to disappear quietly. No witnesses. No complications. Just another problem removed. Bellows slowly set the phone down on his desk. Explain, he said calmly. The man standing in front of him shifted nervously. There was interference. Bellows looked up. What kind of interference? The man hesitated. Daniel Wright. The name hung in the room like a warning. Bellows leaned back slowly in his chair. Of all the people in the city who could have ruined his plan, Daniel Wright was the worst possibility. Because Daniel didn't make random moves. If Daniel Wright had stepped in, it meant something important was at stake. Bellows' eyes narrowed. And the girl? She's with him. Silence filled the room. Bellows stood and walked toward the window overlooking the city. Light stretched across the skyline. Somewhere out there, the woman who had accidentally documented his operation was still alive. That meant the risk hadn't disappeared. It had grown. Bellows spoke quietly. Find her. The man nodded quickly. We're already tracking possible locations. Bellows turned back toward the desk. No mistakes this time. Across the city, inside Daniel Wright's private floor, Emily Carter was already preparing for the next move. The security monitors now displayed multiple windows filled with data. Financial records. Building layouts. Shipment schedules. Every piece of information Daniel had gathered about Bellows' operation. Emily studied the building plans again. The industrial property on 9th Street had become the center of everything. For weeks, she had walked through those corridors without realizing what was happening around her. Now she saw the building differently. Every hallway. Every locked door. Every hidden storage room. They weren't random spaces. They were part of a system. Daniel stood behind her, reviewing the evidence files. Emily turned toward him. If we send this to the federal authorities, what happens next? They investigate, Daniel said. And if they confirm the shipments are illegal, Bellows loses everything. Emily folded her arms. Assets frozen. Daniel nodded. Accounts seized. And his businesses collapse, Emily finished. Daniel looked at her. You're learning fast. Emily gave a small shrug. I design structures, systems, layouts. She glanced back at the monitor. Criminal organizations are just another type of structure. Daniel didn't argue with that. Because she was right. Bellows' operation worked like a building. Remove the support structure and the whole thing collapsed. Daniel began transferring the evidence files into a secure digital package. Every video, every document, every photo Emily had taken. Emily watched the progress bar move slowly across the screen. This single transfer could end one of the most powerful criminal networks in the city. But it could also make them both targets. Emily felt the weight of that reality settle in her chest. Once we send this, she said quietly, Bellows will know. Daniel didn't look away from the screen. He probably already knows. Emily glanced toward the window. Somewhere out there, Bellows' men were probably already searching. But something inside her had changed. Fear had been replaced with something else. Determination. Daniel finished preparing the encrypted file and opened a secure communication channel. A federal investigation office appeared on the screen. The connection request was sent. They waited. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then the call connected. A federal agent appeared on the screen. Daniel spoke calmly. I have evidence connected to Victor Bellows. The agent's expression immediately changed. Bellows' name was well known. We've been trying to get something solid on him for years, the agent said. Daniel transmitted the file. The data transfer began instantly. The agent watched as the evidence uploaded. Video files, financial records, shipment logs, and finally, Emily's basement footage showing the illegal storage crates. The agent leaned closer to the screen. This is enough to open a full investigation. Emily felt her pulse quicken. Will it stop him? She asked. The agent nodded. If everything checks out, we can freeze his assets within days. Daniel ended the call once the transfer finished. The room became quiet again. Emily exhaled slowly. That's it. For now, Daniel said. Investigations take time. Emily looked at the skyline again. But something about the silence felt uneasy. Too quiet. As if the city itself was waiting. Across town, Victor Bellows' phone buzzed again. A new message appeared. Federal activity detected. Bellows read the alert slowly. Then he smiled. Cold. Predictable. So Daniel Wright had decided to involve the authorities. That meant two things. First, Bellows' financial network would soon face pressure. Second, the woman who had helped expose him was still alive. Bellows picked up his phone again. Send a team to the Oksana building, he ordered. Daniel Wright's private floor. The man on the other end hesitated. Are you sure? Bellows' voice hardened. I don't repeat orders. The call ended. Bellows looked back out at the city. If Daniel Wright wanted to start a war, that was fine. But Bellows never lost control of his territory. Not to anyone. And certainly not to a woman who had walked into his operation by accident. Back inside Daniel's private floor, Emily noticed something moving on the security monitors. Several black vehicles had turned onto the street below. They stopped near the building. Emily's stomach tightened. Daniel. Daniel looked at the screen. His expression changed immediately. Bellows' men were already here. Emily felt the tension in the room shift instantly. This wasn't over. Not even close. Daniel calmly closed several security doors across the floor. Looks like Bellows decided not to wait, he said. Emily looked down at the vehicles below. Men were stepping out. Armed. Prepared. The war had officially begun. The vehicles outside the building didn't stay long. Victor Bellows' men had expected an easy job. They thought they would break into Daniel Wright's private floor, eliminate the problem, and leave before anyone noticed. But Daniel Wright was not an easy target. Within minutes, the men realized the building was heavily secured. Cameras watched every entrance. Security doors sealed off the interior floors. Armed guards already controlled the lobby. The attackers understood quickly that this wasn't a simple operation. One by one, the vehicles pulled away from the street. From the security monitors above, Emily watched them disappear into the night. "They're leaving," she said. Daniel didn't relax. "Not leaving," he replied calmly. "Regrouping." Emily looked back at the empty street. For the first time that night, she understood how dangerous Victor Bellows truly was. He didn't stop after one failure. He adapted. He waited. But Daniel had already made the next move. 2 days later, the city woke up to breaking news. Federal investigators had launched a massive financial operation targeting multiple companies connected to Victor Bellows. Bank accounts were frozen. Properties were seized. Shipment routes were blocked. Every business connected to Bellows' network suddenly stopped moving money. Inside one of the federal offices, agents moved quickly between computers, analyzing the evidence Daniel had sent. Emily's video recordings had become the key piece. The basement footage clearly showed illegal materials stored inside the 9th Street building. For the first time in years, investigators finally had proof. And with that proof came action. Across the city, Bellows' empire began collapsing. Companies he secretly controlled suddenly lost access to their accounts. Partners began cutting ties. Shipments were stopped before they reached their destinations. Everything Bellows had built started falling apart. Inside his penthouse office, Victor Bellows stood silently while one of his advisors spoke nervously. "They froze everything." Bellows didn't respond. "Every account. Every company linked to your network." Bellows walked slowly toward the window. The skyline looked the same as it always had. But now he understood something. The city no longer belonged to him. The advisor continued speaking. "They have enough evidence to keep the investigation open for months." Bellows' jaw tightened. "And Daniel Wright?" he asked quietly. "No direct connection yet." Bellows smiled faintly. Daniel had been careful. Very careful. Bellows turned away from the window. "Prepare the jet." The advisor blinked. "You're leaving the city?" Bellows picked up his coat. "For now." Bellows understood something most criminals never accepted. Sometimes the smartest move was survival. If he stayed, the investigation would eventually reach him. If he disappeared, he could rebuild somewhere else. But as Bellows walked out of the penthouse, one thought stayed in his mind. This wasn't over. Not even close. Back at Daniel Wright's private floor, Emily watched the news report playing on one of the monitors. The headline filled the screen. "Federal investigation freezes criminal network linked to Victor Bellows." Emily leaned back in the chair slowly. It actually worked. Daniel stood near the window overlooking the city. "Yes." Emily looked back at the screen. Reporters were already discussing the financial collapse of several companies connected to Bellows. Investigators had officially taken control of the 9th Street building. Everything that had started with her accidental documentation had now become the center of a major investigation. Emily exhaled slowly. 2 days ago, she had almost been kidnapped. Now she had helped bring down one of the most dangerous criminal operations in the city. She turned toward Daniel. "What happens now?" Daniel walked back toward the monitors and shut them off. "Bellows leaves." Emily frowned slightly. "That's it. For now." Emily stood and walked toward the massive windows overlooking the city skyline. Morning light spread across the buildings. For the first time since that night at the restaurant, the city felt calm again. Daniel joined her near the window. Emily glanced at him. "You knew all along that this could work?" Daniel shook his head slightly. "No." Emily looked surprised. "No." Daniel's voice remained calm. "I knew it was possible." Emily smiled faintly. "Well, I'm glad it did." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension that had surrounded them for days had finally faded. Emily turned toward him. "So does this mean I can go back to normal life now?" Daniel studied her carefully. "You can try." Emily laughed softly. "That doesn't sound very convincing." Daniel didn't smile. Bellows may have left the city, but men like him don't forget. Emily crossed her arms. "So I'm still a target." Daniel looked directly at her. "Which is why you won't be alone." Emily raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" Daniel answered calmly. "It means you're under my protection." Emily stared at him for a moment. Then she shook her head slightly. "You're serious?" "Yes." Emily looked back at the skyline. A strange feeling settled in her chest. Just days ago, Daniel Wright had been a stranger watching from above a restaurant. Now he was the man who had saved her life and helped bring down a criminal empire. Life changed fast. But the peace didn't last long. Across the ocean, inside a private office in Lagos, a man watched a news report on a large screen. The report discussed the collapse of Victor Bellows' financial network. The man leaned back slowly in his chair. So Bellows failed. Someone standing nearby nodded. "Yes." The man looked at the screen again. Images of the investigation filled the broadcast. Then one image appeared. Emily Carter, standing near the 9th Street building during the early stages of the investigation. The man smiled slowly. "And this woman helped expose him?" "Yes." The man stood and walked toward the window overlooking the city of Lagos. Ships moved slowly across the harbor. Trade routes. Money. Power. Bellows had lost control of one territory. But there were many others. The man turned back toward the screen. "Send a message to Bellows." "What should we tell him?" The man's smile widened slightly. "Tell him I'm interested in the woman who destroyed his empire." Back in the United States, Emily Carter stood beside Daniel Wright, watching the peaceful city skyline. For the first time in days, everything felt safe. But neither of them knew something. Somewhere far away, a new enemy had just learned her name. And the next threat was already on its way.